Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think what's going on geopolitically right now is people are no longer willing to be a part of what we would call the Western um, um, so, abstract financial system.
Indeed.
I call it the abstract financial system because it's not based on anything real. It's based on things like derivatives,
Mm-hmm.
stocks, bonds,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
trillions of dollars in notional values.
That's right.
Instead of because currencies themselves are fiat. Fiat currencies means that they're objective. They're not like gold, silver, or things like we had in the Middle Ages. They're pieces
Mm-hmm.
of paper which are promissory notes, so that
That's right.
you get this paper and they promise to give you something else for it later.
That's right.
And that's all it is. It's not valuable itself, in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been,
Mm-hmm.
remember how paper money started in the 18th century. It
Mm-hmm.
was an actual promissory note which you would take down to the bank in exchange for gold.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes,
could do
indeed.
that, and people have had faith that you could do that at any time. And so the notes, the bank notes, like in England, where there's the big ones for a lot and the smaller ones for a little, you could
That's right.
actually take those pieces of paper and anytime you wanted and go down to the bank and get your pile of gold or silver.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
England, it was both, and that's where the idea of the pound sterling comes from, because
That's right.
sterling is silver.
That's right.
Anyway, that whole system has been transitioned in the 1970s into basically faith in the king dollar, the American dollar being the worldwide reserve currency. And why is that? Because the king dollar can be used to buy what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing that you need? Well, that's energy, oil.
Yes.
So if you can buy oil with it, that's just the same as like being able to get gold for it, isn't it? Something that you
Mm-hmm.
need, something that's valuable.
That's right.
Well, whoopsie. The main sources of oil are no longer the United States.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, oil production in the United States peaked in the 1960s. And
Mm-hmm.
then after
Mm-hmm.
that, it's no longer, and now it's in other places. Well, the other places like Russia, the Middle
Mm-hmm.
East, and
Mm-hmm.
Iran
That's right.
are no longer taking American dollars for oil.
That's right.
Well, that means it's over. Party's over, guys. You can go home. Nobody wants your dollars anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you believe right now that North America, both US of A and Canada,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to living off of the funny money,
Mm-hmm.
aka fiat currency, our energy source is coming from primarily from US oil, strategic oil reserves.
That's right. They're drawing it down because
Hmm.
they can't buy anything with their money overseas,
That's right.
so they have to sell their oil instead.
Hmm.
That's all
Hmm.
they got. That's a worldwide commodity. There's nothing else in the United States other than technology,
That's
which
right.
is a different kind of a playing field because you don't sell technology to individuals. You sell it to large companies or factories that make your products under license.
You bet.
So that's a little bit different, and that technological advantage is no longer like what it used to be either. But the point is, for daily day living, it's energy and money, and they're having to draw down their oil reserves because they got no money. They're bankrupt. No,
That's right. That's right. And their funny money isn't being recognized by foreign countries such as Russia.
obviously not. And
Hmm.
the sanctions are boomeranging so that now the Russians are extending their. They're not extending their power. And this has nothing to do with the power of their energy resources. It has to do with the power of the American dollar. The
You bet.
Russians aren't taking dollars for oil or gas anymore.
Hmm.
That's what this all means. It doesn't mean that
Hmm.
the Russians are turning off oil and gas.
Hmm.
You can have all the oil and gas you want from Russia. But if you're not going to pay for it with something that the Russians want, then you're going to get cut off. And that's what the Russians have done just today with the Netherlands. And that's what they did last week. I think it was with Poland. And then there was Sweden and so on. And you know, and of course these countries are between a rock and a hard place because they have to obey their WEF, UN, EU masters.
That's right.
Because they've all been, all their politicians are put into power by them, just like it is here in Canada. But the businesses in those countries, which is the real power, the economics, they're refusing to cooperate with the political elite in all these countries, and they're simply paying in rubles for the gas through offshore banks or through Gazprom accounts set up in safe havens where they can exchange for what they need. So they're defying all these ridiculous political sanctions, and they're buying their energy one way or the other. And of course, so the Russians aren't cutting anybody off. It's these countries are cutting themselves off by refusing to pay. But that's not how you see it in the news, is it?
Well, the news won't tell you the truth.
No, it
after
won't. All these people have to do is pay in rubles. And you can go get rubles anywhere you want if you take some gold with you.
That's right. No gold, no deal.
But if
no
you
precious metal, no deal.
If you take a whole pile of treasury notes, T-bills, or American dollars, you'll get maybe 20 or 30% on the dollar if you're lucky, because that's what they're worth now. Another thing about the price of oil, you know, at the pump here we are with extremely high oil prices.
Yes, this morning West Coast 224 per liter.
Yeah, well, gas is something like 18 cents a liter in Iran. It's something like 25 cents a liter in Dubai.
That's right.
So what's going on? Why is that? And the actual world price of just oil is average 30% less in Asia and Africa and that's a so-called world price. Sorry, world price isn't working anymore. Now it's higher in the West than it is in the East.
Correct.
So this is a very strange situation. It's equally ironic that Canada and the U.S. are totally self-sufficient in oil.
That's right.
This is artificially.
In the year three of President T's, the 45th president, while he was in power. Because for the first time, not only U.S. was capable of keeping the energy price low, but also the first time for a long time in America's history that suddenly U.S. becomes an energy exporting country.
Absolutely.
Meaning that they're able to take shale gas through fracking.
Yep.
Break it down and use the technology called GTO, gas to oil conversion, and then export them.
Yes, and the main problem in North America is the oil isn't where the refineries are. So what you have to do is move it by pipeline or rail.
That's right.
And what's the first thing the Biden presidency did? After 1 week in power, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, which was designed to move oil and other products from the oil fields of Alberta down to the United States and the East and the oil refineries along the way. Okay? Why was that? Why did they do that? Think about it deeply. Well, the reason why they did that is because the oil in Canada and the actual pipeline itself is not controlled by the Rockefeller oil empire.
That's right.
It's not, or the Khazarian mafia, some people call them.
That's right.
It's controlled by other companies that are not in their sphere of influence. So the entire energy crisis is caused by the fact that it's not a matter of lack of oil. We got oil right here. It's just that it's not the oil that they own, that they control, and that they need in order to get money for themselves, and they're going to be bankrupt. So it's the Biden regime that it's cutting off all other sources of oil, forcing people to buy its own inflated, overpriced oil, which is why the gas pump is so high. And then, of course, the petroleum reserve, they can just release that slowly at a very high price and make and steal all that money and make a profit from it.
That's right.
So
But ultimately, we're
yeah,
still living and circulating the funny money throughout continental North America,
yes,
especially in Canada and the USA.
yes, and it's necessary for them to do this ridiculous squeeze, all this ridiculous pressure on us, because we're their captive economic slaves, and they're basically doing sanctions against Russia and to squeeze the Europeans to try to get them to buy American natural gas, for example, at
Hmm.
hugely inflated prices.
That's
So
right.
or American public and the Canadian public to pay hugely inflated prices for gasoline, controlled by companies controlled by the Biden administration and their friends.
Yes.
So that's what it is. It has nothing to do with anything else. And this situation will be over
Hmm.
when it gets to the point where people stop driving
Hmm.
and or people rebel against their political leaders for this for creating this situation,
Of course.
and when imports grind to a halt
Hmm.
because there's nothing left to trade.
That's right.
Dollars just paper, and it's already happening. Whenever the Americans try to finance their debt by having another T-bill auction,
Hmm.
it's gotten down to the point where, of course, no foreign money is being invested in American T-bills. They're having to go into their own digital printing press and
Yes.
print their own money to buy their own T-bills, and they're getting hedge funds and so-called independent buyers to do that, but they're not. For example, the hedge funds, when they go and buy T-bills, they can go back to the Federal Reserve the next week and cash them in for American dollars again.
That's right.
Yeah, but those dollars are only good in North America. You can't buy anything from outside this economic bubble that we've created by the international sanctions against the East. And of course, China's not participating in those sanctions.
Hmm.
Russia's certainly not. India
Hmm.
has refused.
Hmm.
And it's getting down to Japan and South
Hmm.
Korea are probably the only two economic powerhouses outside of Europe and North America that are cooperating.
That's right.
And I don't think that'll hold out for very long either.
Mm.
And then, of course,
Wow.
most of South America, especially led by countries like Brazil and Venezuela, are not cooperating with the sanctions.
That's right. That's right.
And are just weaning themselves from the US dollar. If things go like this, you
Hmm.
can actually watch in real time the collapse of the US dollar by looking at the US ruble exchange rate.
Yes.
It's gone from 80 3 months ago, 80 rubles to the dollar. Yesterday it was 64.
Hmm.
And for a while it was 58 last week. It
Wow.
went back up a little bit. Now it's down to 64. If I look on my browser right now,
Hmm.
let's just for sake of fun see what it is today because it's a
Sure.
Monday and it's
It's
64.
probably good.
It's holding steady at 64.
Wow.
Now all it has to do, and it's heading back down again. It was up to 66 on Sunday.
Hmm.
So if it heads back down again and gets below 50, that is a real time devaluation of the US dollar. Well, what's the difference between 50 and 80? It's about 30%.
Mm.
So there's a 30% devaluation of the US dollar. Because remember, the Russian ruble is exchangeable directly for gold.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's it.
That's right.
So it's only taken 2 months. Another month or two, and the American economy will totally collapse as far vis-a-vis imports.
Mm.
There won't be any, and that'll lead to a change in government and so on. So that is what's the important factor. Now people say,
Hmm.
"Oh, war is far more important than money." No, no. No, wars are fights over money. Get it?
That's right.
So what's
Yes.
important, the war or the money? Okay, and
Ultimately, it all boils down to the money.
yep,
It's the money that
of course,
matters.
of course. And what is money? Well, money is a control mechanism.
Hmm.
In the past, money was rare.
Hmm.
Only elites ever used it.
Hmm.
Only elites ever had any.
Hmm.
uh, Gold mostly that they would use to buy soldiers, mercenaries, and weapons to have wars with each other.
Yep.
Trade uh, was international trade was limited to luxury goods and products.
That's right.
All through the Middle Ages, all through the time in the ancient world, the time of the what we call the Silk Road
Hmm.
between Asia, China, and the West, the trading items were all luxury items: wine, jewels,
Silk,
spices, silks,
spice.
jewelry of all kinds. Things, luxury products. Do you think the
Hmm.
common people ever had anything from China? Of course not. Do you think the common
Nope.
people ever had even money? Of course not. The king's
Nope.
tax collectors would come around once a year to grab people's crops
Hmm.
and their animals, a certain percentage. That's how you paid your taxes. There's no
Hmm.
currency. That was for
Yep.
traders. That was for merchants. The common peasant
Hmm.
class never used money, and that's because they didn't have any, didn't need it. So
That's right.
we're in a situation now where we're going to have to return to a form of self-sufficient barter within
Yes.
communities because there will be money, but it won't be the kind that is not based on a specific commodity or gold and silver
Hmm.
that you can
Hmm.
hold in your hand. No more
Hmm.
paper. Goodbye. And people who dream about digital currencies, well, yeah, there might be a very well constructed method of digital valuations for international trade,
Hmm.
which won't be corruptible because
Correct.
it'll be on the blockchain verifiable, just like an email is never gets lost, even though it's divided into these little packets. Because when you send the email, there's a code for the beginning of the packet and the end of the packet, and there's a send and receive signal, and that's how the internet works. And so it can't be it can't an email doesn't get fragmented, and there's proof of who sent it and who got it.
Hmm.
So money exchanges will be like that. But any digital currency will be exchangeable directly for gold and silver eventually, just like the ruble is
Yes.
today.
Yes.
Well, right away, if you have a system like that, you've destroyed the cabal.
Well, for commoners like you and I, other than the fact that
Mm-hmm.
considering something that really holds value,
Mm-hmm.
such as precious metals and such,
Yep.
the other way perhaps is that we have to brace for this rough ride.
We
This
do.
up and coming rough ride.
I would estimate the number of people who are ahead of the curve and are awake that have precious metals or something of that sort in their homes is
Hmm.
way less than 10%
Indeed.
of the population.
Indeed.
If you went back 100 years ago, it would be well over 80%.
Yes.
But today, because of this decoupling
Hmm.
into the world of fantasy
Hmm.
with the fiat currencies and paper money, and the
Hmm.
fact that we don't even have a gold reserve, Canada's gold reserve was emptied out
Hmm.
in the 1990s, I believe, by the conservative government under can't remember his name right now, but anyway, he's the one who sold the last of our gold reserves. He's WEF too, by the way,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
previous prime minister.
You bet.
And I guess you've been noticing how the WEF alumni keep cropping up everywhere, like on the board of directors of Twitter. How about that?
Of course.
Amazing.
Well, we've been in we've been trapped in this controlled situation for a long, long time,
Right.
and without without knowledge.
Exactly.
But as time goes by, it seems like the general public are coming to the awakening and the awareness that the devils are among us all these time.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I've known about Klaus Schwab for about 8 years. Okay?
Mm,
About 8 years ago is when I first heard of the guy and when I first heard of the WEF. Well, I'd heard of the WEF before, but I didn't know that this particular man, Klaus Schwab, had founded it way back in the 1950s. Because Klaus Schwab is quite old. He's in his late 80s.
that's
And,
right.
I started to look into this guy, and that's when I found out that his family owned this engineering firm, which originally is
Mm,
Swiss, but they set it up in Ravensburg, or is it
mhm,
Ravensbrück? I can't remember. I
mhm,
think it's Ravensburg in Germany, which is just over the Swiss border. And Ravensburg was never bombed during World War II.
mhm,
That's one interesting thing about it. And it had a labor camp full of Jewish slaves and Russian soldiers in a prison camp there. And then, of course, I found out Klaus Schwab's father was a member of what was called Hitler's Friends Circle.
mm,
This Friends Circle, and Himmler had one too, and Goring had one too. These were
mm,
sponsors in the financial community and in the industrial community in Germany. And the way they
mhm,
would do it is the big industrial firms like Krupp and the big banks, they would sponsor politicians in order to represent their interests as elected officials. Okay,
mhm,
so this is the
mhm,
way it's done in all countries. For example, Trudeau is sponsored by the Seagrams family,
mm,
and that's where his political power comes from. And that they sponsored his father likewise. And
mhm,
in fact, the Seagram Scone, the oldest son, was Justin Trudeau's campaign manager. And of course, the embarrassing part about the Seagram sisters being on trial and some of them in jail for being part of that Nexium uh, sex slave cult
mhm,
is, of course, brushed under the table by the captured media who were paid to keep quiet about that. But let's get back to Klaus Schwab. His family is so Nazi, it's not even funny. And I've known this for a
mhm.
long time, and I searched and searched the internet, and couldn't find anything more specific because it's been scrubbed. And then, lo and behold, today I see the photo in Ben Fulford's website of Klaus Schwab's father in his Nazi uniform.
Mhm,
Well,
mhm.
where did that come from? You see, that things like that is proves to me that Ben is very well connected because that photograph could only come from an NSA secret archive or some other intelligence service file. Okay,
Mhm,
that
mhm,
photo's never been on the internet before. So there you go.
mhm.
Somebody dug that up, gave it to Ben. That means that there's a concerted disclosure effort going on now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
and the
things are
facts.
definitely going. So let's see how it progresses.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
yeah,
we're looking forward to better days ahead,
yep,
better futures.
yep.
It's going to be a rough ride for certain
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of things are happening,
Mm-hmm.
and people are definitely waking up to a certain degree. But
Absolutely.
given in time, they're going to wake up more and more, and the world will be different by then.
And remember that the media is never going to tell you that people are waking up. But you
Of
can you
course.
read between the lines and you can figure out that it's true. And the best example here in Canada, if you want to keep local, is the fact that both NDP leader and the Liberal leader cannot appear in public anywhere
That's right. That's right.
without.
The NDP leader was chased out of the Brampton, Ontario,
Yeah,
the Sikh community, and
yeah.
apparently the Sikhs don't like him
But the
after
guy
all.
is Sikh himself. He's
Yes,
Sikh himself, and for his own religious group to turn against him like that is absolutely amazing. Because that means they're calling him a traitor to
that's
their movement.
That's right. So we'll have to wait and see how things progresses.
And Trudeau can't show up even in so-called safe liberal ridings or even NDP ridings. He can't even show up in NDP ridings, which he thought would be even safer,
Well, it
without being
goes to show
heckled.
how unpopular
Hmm.
these these Canadian political figureheads are now,
Right now,
and
now you want
yeah, and
to.
it also makes
Hmm.
you kind of, as typical Canadians, it makes also goes back to makes you wonder
Hmm.
how the federal Liberal Prime Minister was able to capture the second round of most recent election back in last September.
Well, it does make me wonder what kind of fraud was involved there, and we do know that the media is completely fraudulent. And here's another evidence of that. If you
Mm-hmm.
remember back in September, there were all these polls saying how
Mm-hmm.
popular Trudeau was because of his amazing COVID response and how he'd saved us all from the horrible dragon at the door of our cave. And all us poor, cowering cavemen had to rely on him to save us all, and that's how he got reelected, and blah, blah, blah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
how come there's no popularity polls been published about Trudeau for since last fall? How come when you search the internet right now you can't find a popularity poll for Trudeau? You can't find one for Singh. Why? I thought the pollers were neutral. I thought
No,
the
they're not.
I guess they only do polls when they get told to, and it's all controlled. Is that it? So polls are just a form of manipulation, again, like an advertisement. So actually, we live in a world of lies.
That's right.
Uh huh.
It's a big, big lie.
Right. Okay. Well,
Stop.
I think people are waking up.
Mhm. Stop. Hello?